Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber, joined here by trial attorney Bob Hille, and we are going to break down the biggest live trials and legal stories in the news today. And guess what? We are going to be live in multiple trials today across the country. We have so much to talk about, so let's get started right now. Thanks, Rachel. And again, one thing to note, what we're waiting for today is that Jane Doe number 2 is expected to testify. Maybe we'll even hear from Jane Doe number 3, but before we get there, I want to break down everything that's happening in this case. So, Bob, let's just break this down. We got 5 women, a 16-year span, multiple charges and incidents. Is this a tough and complicated case for the prosecution?
It is, but there is an advantage, because if they can prove strongly 1 or 2 of those, the fact that you have all these charges cumulatively together can also work against the defendant.
How so?
Because it doesn't look like an isolated incident where you can attack one issue of credibility. If somebody else's credibility holds up or the evidence holds up to them, it sort of diminishes the impact from the witness's recollection or memory in the other cases.
And it's hard because you got different charges. There's more ones that are more serious than the other. You have rape, it was 1 charge, then you have indecent exposure, and they really can get him on multiple grounds. So the idea that he would skate free of everything could be a little bit more difficult. But isn't also the danger that if they think he did one thing, they think that he did the other things?
Well, I think, and that's the problem with having all these cases together,
right,
as you pointed out.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll tell you what, though, let's go to the openings, because in case you haven't seen this, this is important. We're going to play you now. This is what happened when the state as well as the defense began their case, and it gives you a good outline of where both sides are going in this trial. Watch.
Kellen Winslow is a man who has been given much, but it was not enough.
In opening statements, prosecutors tried to paint a portrait of defendant Kellen Winslow as a privileged superstar, repeating the theme that his fame and fortune were never enough.
Instead, he took from these women.
Prosecutor Dan Owens gave graphic accounts of Winslow allegedly threatening his victims as he raped them.
As the defendant's attitude changed, he then told her, "I'm going to fuck you, and if you say anything, I will kill you."
The state's case rests largely on the words of the accusers. The defense attacked the accusers as opportunistic liars.
Those accusers aren't giving you the whole truth.
The defense said consensual encounters have morphed into rape accusations because of Winslow's stature.
Jane Doe 1 is charged with kidnapping her. She wanted to get into his car, and they have oral sex. Per her original statement, it was not forced. She left that part out of her statement.
Defense attorney Brian Watkins delivered parts of his opening statements with his hands on the shoulders of his client.
When you're in the spotlight, people want things from you.
While the prosecution spoke for about an hour, the defense's opening lasted only 15 minutes. For the Law and Crime Network, I'm Rachel Stockman.
Bob, first let's talk tactics. Putting his hands on the shoulders of his client, calling him by his first name, that's intentional, right?
Oh, I think absolutely. It's trying to sort of create a relationship, a warmth about the defendant, and make him as a person to the jury and not just as a defendant.
Well, because fame is a big factor. Now, can't fame be used both by the prosecution and the defense here?
Well, defense has to be careful here on fame, because there are charges and there were deals that were made with the prosecution on other offenses, such as the burglary with intent to commit sexual assault on 2 other elderly women, and there was a young person as well. So if they start bringing character into this case, the state may be able to, and the judge didn't definitively keep that out unless the defense opens a door. The defense can open the door now maybe to the state using those other issues to show this fella is not the great character that the state's portraying him. So they're doing it in subtle ways here, which I think is really great.
But he's also a target, right? Isn't that the big idea, what the defense is saying? He's an easy target because he's famous, he has wealth. We see these cases before where women or people come after celebrities. I mean, that's the main defense you hear when a celebrity's on trial.
Well, yes, but that goes to the motivation of the victims.
Okay.
And why they're here, as opposed to, with respect to the defendant, that he wouldn't do this kind of thing. They're not denying that he had sex with these individuals. What they're arguing, what this case is going to come down to, is the issue of consent.
And credibility. I mean, right after our break, we are going to play, and if you haven't seen this, wait does everybody see this, the testimony of Jane Doe number 1. Give a preview. How did she do?
There are going to be big problems with the credibility for victim number one.
Is it, okay, was it the idea she had trouble positively identifying him at one point in the proceedings? Was it the idea that she was questioned about her alcoholism and she denied it even though she had been arrested for alcohol-related incidents? You tell me, what was the biggest problem for her in terms of credibility?
Well, this case is all going to come down, as you said, to credibility on the issue of consent, I think, for the 3 rapes. The other parts of it are different. So how strongly these witnesses stand up on their overall credibility is going to impact whether or not the jury is likely to believe, beyond a reasonable doubt, that they did not consent to the sex that's been charged.
And even though it's 5 incidents, you know, you're going from 2003 to 2019, not all of them were rapes, some of them were indecent exposure, lewd acts. The idea here, there's like a common theme here of him being, as the prosecution said, a serial predator of women. But one of the weird things, and this is a weird case, did you notice, did it strike you as odd that a majority of these victims or these accusers are older in age? Does that strike you as a little odd?
I think there's obviously something going on here that creates a population of a target. And yeah, that is something that's not the usual that you would expect, especially from a 33-year-old NFL athlete.
In other words, if I'm understanding it correctly, that helps the prosecution. Because if you had women from all different ages, you could say he just goes after women. But here, if he had a specific group, it would be strange that all of these accusers who are older in age would conspire together to come after him.
For that reason, the defense has a problem here.
Right.
And they have to really kind of focus case by case with the jury, because if they start looking at this whole thing as a group, then the state gets an advantage, I think, in that.
Well, I'll tell you what, when we come back, we are going to play some of the testimony from this witness, Jane Doe number 1. We're expecting to hear from Jane Doe number 2 today, and maybe even Jane Doe number 3. I'm keeping a very careful eye on the courtroom feed in Jones. We have a lot to cover, multiple live trials today. We're going to be back right after this.